world began long before cities, before writing, before metal. Fire changed bodies, tools changed minds, art changed culture, farming changed everything. These Stone Age inventions built the path to modern life. This is how humanity began.
When we talk about human history, the Stone Age, it often gets a terrible rap.
Oh, absolutely.
It conjures these images of simplicity, slow progress, just grunting.
Right, millions of years of just sort of existing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But our sources today, they paint a radically different picture. This wasn't a time of stasis at all. It was maybe the most intense creative explosion in history. This is where we finalize the blueprints for civilization itself.
That's so well put. What we're doing in this deep dive is moving beyond that idea of primitive tools and looking at the cognitive loops these inventions represent.
The thinking behind the tool.
Precisely. We are tracking a foundational transformation. In a relatively short span of time, geologically speaking, Homo went from, using a naturally sharp stone to designing complex architecture, developing high culture, and building cities.
So our mission is ambitious. We're going to review source material that really zeroes in on 6 massive foundational achievements. And these are not just minor tweaks in existing tech.
No, these are pivot points.
They're pivotal moments that shifted our evolutionary path permanently. I want to show you that the transition from a simple hominid to a settled, creative, high-culture builder was driven by, necessity, critical thinking, and some incredible engineering skill.
And we'll track that whole journey. We'll start with the energy revolution, the mastery of fire.
Okay.
Then the first tool that required genuine planning intelligence. After that, the specialized engineering needed for coordinated hunting teams.
Huge step.
A huge step. Then we'll pivot into the rise of symbolic thought, which we see in the birth of art, but that's balanced by this silent critical necessity of, specialized clothing technology.
Right.
And finally, the massive societal shift brought about by the agricultural revolution, which ultimately funded the first metropolis.
It's a remarkable story of ingenuity, connecting a million-year-old flame to the foundation of the modern city.
Let's unpack this.
We'll do it.
So let's start with what has to be the most profound change to the human condition, fact number 1. The mastery of fire.
This is where our ancestors stopped being purely biological beings and became, engineers of their own environment. This is so much more than just warmth. This is the moment we hacked our own operating system.
It really is. We're placing this mastery roughly 1 million years ago. And, it's crucial to understand the difference between just being aware of fire.
Like seeing a lightning strike.
Exactly. Seeing a lightning strike or a wildfire and actively controlling fire. Mastering it means knowing how to sustain it, transfer it, and perhaps most complexly, how to ignite it reliably when you need it.
And who do we credit with this monumental, pivotal feat?
This achievement is credited to Homo erectus. And you have to think of the immediate massive benefits.
Of course.
Fire provided warmth, which allowed Homo erectus to survive colder and colder climates and expand into totally new territories.
It extends your range.
Massively. It provided light, extending the functional day, allowing for nighttime work, communication, processing things, and maybe most psychologically impactful, it provided protection. It created this perimeter that kept large, often nocturnal predators at bay.
The psychological confidence boost alone must have been just transformative.
Absolutely.
So that's the survival aspect. But the evolutionary game changer, the part that literally transformed our species, revolves around diet. The sources specify that Homo erectus became the first to prepare meat and plants over flames. We need to dive into why this is so much more than just a culinary preference.
This is the critical dietary shift. It's often called the cooking hypothesis, and it provided the metabolic fuel for civilization itself.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly?
Well, raw food, especially raw meat and tough root vegetables, is incredibly difficult for the body to process. Our digestive system, our gut, has to expend a tremendous amount of energy to break down those dense proteins and complex starches.
So when food is cooked, what is physically happening that saves the body all that work?
Cooking is essentially pre-digestion outside the body.
Oh, okay.
It physically denatures proteins, which makes them much easier for our enzymes to access, and it gelatinizes starches. So when we eat cooked food, the gut just doesn't have to work as hard. And this is hugely significant because the gut is one of the most metabolically expensive organs in the body.
Second only to the brain, right?
Second only to the brain.
So if the gut is suddenly operating at a massive energy surplus, where does all that energy go?
Yeah.
Because in evolution, if energy is freed up, it gets repurposed immediately.
Precisely. That freed up energy and sources suggest cooking can reduce energy expenditure by up to 50% during digestion.
Wow, 50%.
It was redirected. It was used to fuel the most energy-intensive organ in the body, the brain. So over time, the pressure for a large, robust digestive tract lessened. This led to a shrinking of the gut and associated structures, like smaller jaws and teeth. This anatomical trade-off, it's known as the expensive tissue hypothesis, and it allowed the human brain to grow significantly, almost reaching the modern size achieved by later Homo sapiens.
That is just profound. The invention of the controlled kitchen was the catalyst for the intelligent brain.
Yes.
It's the ultimate energy hack. Without that metabolic surplus provided by fire, we simply couldn't afford the complex neural architecture necessary for language, art, and everything that follows. It immediately sets the Stone Age apart as the true foundation.
It absolutely does. The hearth became more than just a place of warmth. It became the social center, a place for shared meals, for knowledge transmission, for planning. It fundamentally changed the human niche and provided the mental horsepower required for the next big step, imposing design on nature.
So if fire gave us the fuel, this next step provided the means to actually apply that intelligence.
Right.
Fact number 2, the all-purpose intelligence tool. And this innovation actually predates the routine use of fire, which shows that the drive for efficiency was deeply ingrained in the hominid lineage even before the brain hit its maximum size.
That's right. The origins of stone tool technology are incredibly deep. We're talking 2.5 million years ago.
2.5 million.
We're talking about the vast, geologically dramatic expanse of the Great African Rift Valley. This region, often called the cradle of humanity, is where researchers found the earliest testimony not just of hominid existence, but of the beginnings of civilization, that impulse to manufacture.
And the artifact we're focusing on is iconic. The hand axe or the Faustkeil. I think a lot of people assume early tools were just, random sharp rocks. But the Faustkeil is different. Why does this specific artifact represent such a monumental cognitive leap?
Because the Faustkeil represents the first hard evidence of human planning intelligence. Foresight.
Planning intelligence.
Early technology, what's known as Oldowan, was often just breaking a rock to get one sharp edge. The Acheulean hand axe, the Faustkeil, that requires multiple coordinated strikes over both faces of the rock to achieve a very specific symmetrical teardrop shape. You have to hold the finished product, the ideal form in your mind, before you ever strike the first flake.
Okay, but wait. How do we know this isn't just the most efficient way to break a rock and the shape is just an accident?
Yeah.
Why is that symmetry so critical to proving planning?
The symmetry is everything. Functionally, a tool doesn't need to be perfectly symmetrical on both sides to cut something.
Right.
But the vast majority of these tools, and they're found consistently across multiple continents and cultures for over 1 million years, they exhibit a high degree of bilateral symmetry. This suggests an aesthetic choice or a standardized template that was successfully transmitted culturally, a manufacturing blueprint.
It's the imposition of a standardized, non-natural design onto the world.
That's the definition of engineering.
It's the difference between picking up a stone and picking up an idea and then manifesting it in stone.
Precisely. And the design was so robust and ingenious that it became the longest used tool in human history. It truly earned the nickname the Swiss Army knife of the Stone Age, because of its incredible versatility.
Let's talk about that versatility, because it's easy to dismiss it as just a chopping tool.
Yeah.
What were the specific functions that made the hand axe such an essential piece of tech?
Well, it was an all-purpose processor. Its sharp edges allowed for breaking open thick animal bones to get at the highly nutritious marrow.
Which is a vital energy source for growing brains.
A vital source. The pointed end could be used for drilling holes in hides or wood. The wider bays could be used for removing tough bark from trees or digging up difficult roots and tubers. And of course, the primary cutting function was essential for removing meat from animal bones cleanly and efficiently. It minimized waste.
So it's not just a survival tool, it's a time saver. Efficiency gives you more time for social bonding, exploration, or just resting. And the fact that this design was so ubiquitous across the globe, found in Africa, Asia, Europe, that raises a really important question about the spread of knowledge.
It does. It suggests either parallel evolution, meaning that across the world, multiple hominid groups arrived independently at the same, most optimal solution.
Which is incredible, and it's...
Incredible. Or it suggests extremely successful and long-distance cultural transmission of a standardized manufacturing technique. Either way, it demonstrates a shared universal cognitive leap towards abstract planning. the combination of fire for energy and the hand axe for applied planning intelligence. It fundamentally reestablished humanity's place in the natural order.
Okay, so with that foundation set, the brain is powered, and we have the universal tool. The narrative shifts from generalized efficiency to specialized elite engineering. We're transitioning from simple survival to really outright environmental mastery. This brings us to fact number 3. Sophisticated hunting and specialized engineering. We move from just processing found meat to becoming the most feared apex predator on the continent.
Yes, and we move geographically and chronologically forward. We land in Europe about 300,000 years ago. And the proof of this elite status is just stunningly preserved in the Schöningen spears, which were discovered in Germany.
Wow.
These are not just artifacts, they are blueprints of applied ballistics from 500,000 years ago.
300,000 years. That timescale is immense, and the level of technical mastery they represent is just astonishing. The inventor, or at least the master user of this technology, is credited to Homo heidelbergensis, which positions them right in that transitional period of profound intelligence.
And this is where the deep dive into the source material is so vital. We can't just call them sharpened sticks.
No.
The sources specify they were constructed from robust elastic spruce wood, or Fichtenholz. This required not only sophisticated material science, knowing that spruce is dense, flexible, and holds up well to impact, but also sophisticated processing. They likely would have cured the wood, maybe heating the tip over a fire to harden it further, creating a very strong, durable point without even needing to fit a stone head.
The knowledge required to select the specific wood, cure it, and then shape it. That shows an understanding of material properties we usually associate with much, much later engineering.
It does.
But the detail that truly proves high-level ballistic knowledge, as you mentioned, is the weight distribution.
Absolutely. This is the most crucial design feature. The sources confirm that the center of gravity was intentionally placed in the forward third of the spear. This single detail tells us they weren't just throwing something heavy. They understood projectile dynamics.
Okay, wait. How do we know this forward balance wasn't just, a byproduct of using the denser core of the tree or stripping the bark unevenly? What's the specific evidence that proves intentional engineering?
Researchers analyzed the remaining wood structure. The density was deliberately manipulated. By using the butt end of the tree, which naturally has denser wood, and then working the shaft to taper it precisely, they ensured the maximum mass was concentrated near the point. If you balance a javelin or a spear today, placing the weight forward increases stability in flight. It reduces wobble, and it maximizes the kinetic energy upon impact.
So this wasn't accidental.
Not at all. This was performance optimization. They were building primitive but highly accurate javelins.
That dramatically changes the mental picture. We're talking about individuals capable of calculating trajectory, velocity, impact mechanics. If they were capable of this level of ballistic planning and design, how sophisticated must their teaching, their training, their communication methods have been to train an effective hunting team?
That is the ultimate implication. The success metrics from the archaeological site itself, they illustrate the shift from individual scavenging to highly effective social cooperation.
So what do they find?
The presence of tens of thousands of wild horse bones at Schöningen. This isn't just a successful hunting season, it's evidence of repeated, high-volume kills over many generations.
Tens of thousands of horse bones. That implies massive coordinated animal drives. They must have been using the terrain, employing sophisticated strategy, maybe using fire or natural barriers to herd the animals.
Precisely. This kind of mass kill, it requires strategic coordination, clear communication, signals, absolute trust in the abilities of your teammates, and the reliability of your weapon.
It's the birth of division of labor.
It is a division of labor necessary for specialized execution. Some would be driving, others would be positioned for the throw, and others still for processing the kill. This social complexity, driven by technological advancement, is the necessary prerequisite for the large-scale permanent settlements that come much later. It moves humanity firmly into the realm of organized society.
So we've established the metabolic capacity and the strategic capacity. Now, as Homo sapiens emerges, we see the mind turn inward. The next phase, facts 4 and 5, reveal this simultaneous explosion of symbolic thought, the birth of culture, and the necessity of microengineering for survival in extreme climates.
It's a fascinating duality, isn't it? On one hand, humanity is creating these monumental, abstract expressions of their fears and their desires.
Right.
And on the other, They're mastering the minutiae of insulation to just ensure basic survival. This flowering of high culture and essential technology occurred roughly 40,000 years ago, deep in the bitter cold of Ice Age Europe.
Let's start with fact number 4 then. The birth of Ice Age art. Why did humanity, struggling to survive in the cold, suddenly devote immense time and resources to creating pictures in deep, dark, difficult-to-reach caves?
Because surviving wasn't enough, they needed to control the world symbolically. The sources call these pictures of magical effect, which implies ritual and sympathetic magic.
Sympathetic magic.
The act of painting a successful hunt or the most powerful animals, it probably wasn't art for art's sake. It was likely a ritualistic attempt to influence future reality, to ensure the continued availability of the herd or to protect the hunters.
The subject matter clearly reinforces that purpose. The depictions are overwhelmingly of wild animals. Bison, bears, horses, the things they needed to kill or the things that could kill them.
Yes, and the techniques were incredibly sophisticated for the environment. These caves were often hundreds of meters deep, pitch black and cold.
Right.
Homo sapiens used mineral pigments, iron oxides for reds, manganese oxides for blacks ground, and mixed with water or animal fat. They used bone tubes to spray paint, creating stencils and soft shading. They even used scaffolding to reach high ceilings. This required organization, specialized knowledge of pigment chemistry, and portable lighting solutions.
It's astounding to think they were performing this high-level artistry using the equivalent of, oil lamps and scaffolding deep underground 40,000 years ago.
It is.
And what about the individual connection? The source mentions hand negatives.
The hand negative is one of the most poignant details. These stenciled hands, often found overlying or next to the massive animal murals, they served as the personal signature of the Ice Age artists.
I was here.
Exactly. It's a deliberate declaration of individual identity and agency. I, this person, was here, and I participated in this sacred ritual. It marks a massive psychological leap into self-awareness and the assertion of individuality within the collective.
And beyond the murals, the sources highlight sculptural achievements from the same period, which confirms that this symbolic impulse wasn't just limited to cave walls.
No, we have the oldest confirmed sculptures of humanity, again, largely centered in the Swabian Alb region. There's the famous Venus of Hohlefels, carved from mammoth ivory, distinguished by her markedly ample proportions.
A fertility symbol, most likely.
Yes, often interpreted as a symbol of fertility, abundance, life force. It demonstrates the conceptualization of abstract spiritual power.
And the Venus of Willendorf, another iconic example, is specifically noted because she is the first human depiction to include a head, though it's often stylized or braided rather than detailed. What's the significance of adding a head in the artistic representation?
Well, the head often signifies consciousness, identity, or divinity. The sources suggest this figure may represent a more formalized mother deity or an earth goddess. While the Hohlefels Venus emphasized reproductive power, the Willendorf figure suggests a step toward a more integrated anthropomorphic concept of divinity.
So art is the externalization of a complex shared mythology.
Yes, and that complex mythology is essential for binding large groups of people together, which paves the way for the coordination needed for the next phase.
Okay, so while some were carving goddesses, others were focused on immediate practical survival. This brings us to fact number 5. The unassuming weapon against the cold.
This is the quiet genius of the Stone Age.
We're talking about the invention of the sewing needle, developed during the last glacial period, the Calcite. Why is this tiny piece of technology elevated to the status of one of the most important weapons in their arsenal?
Because its impact was purely logistical and energy-saving, the needle allowed for thermal optimization. Before the needle, clothing was essentially draped hides. And while that's better than nothing, draping leads to gaps, drafts, and massive heat loss. When you are fighting glacial cold, every single calorie counts.
So the needle enabled tailoring.
Exactly. The needle allowed Ice Age people to sew tailored, fitted, and importantly, layered clothing. By creating snug-fitting pants, jackets, and hoods, they trapped air close to the body, creating insulating layers that were exponentially more effective than simple draping.
It's an energy saver.
It meant they could hunt, travel, and conduct their daily lives much more efficiently without diverting massive metabolic energy simply to maintain their core temperature.
It's the second great energy hack, after cooking. Cooking gave them the fuel, the needle stopped them from burning it all just to stay warm.
And its utility wasn't just limited to clothing. The sources highlight its dual function. They used the metal and sinew to perfectly seal their huts and dwellings. They could join large hides or woven materials to create airtight, insulated enclosures.
That turns a crude shelter into a thermally regulated microclimate.
That's the key takeaway. By minimizing heat loss in their dwellings and optimizing their clothing, they dramatically increased their comfort, reduced resource expenditure, less firewood needed, and fundamentally optimized their living conditions.
That's amazing.
This ingenuity allowed Homo sapiens to survive and flourish even under the most extreme climatic conditions, enabling further dispersal, migration, and permanent settlement into previously uninhabitable zones. Without the needle, the global expansion of Ice Age culture would have been geographically limited.
It's the ultimate illustration that complexity doesn't require size. The simple, humble needle allowed for the survival of the species that produced those grand cave paintings. It shows that human ingenuity is driven by both symbolic needs and acute practical necessity.
A perfect summary.
Okay, we've traced the arc from metabolic change to planning intelligence, from coordinated hunting to symbolic culture, all protected by the thermal microengineering. All of this sets the stage for the single most radical, world-changing transformation of the Stone Age. Fact number 6, the agricultural revolution.
The sources unequivocally describe this as the most important revolution in human history. It's the moment humanity stopped just taking what nature offered and started bending nature to its will.
But the fascinating part, from what I'm reading in our sources, is what drove this revolution. It wasn't environmental pressure or a sudden moment of genius in a field.
No, it was social and cultural need.
Let's locate this pivotal event. We are 12,000 years ago, moving into the Neolithic era in modern-day Turkey.
We are talking about Göbekli Tepe. This site is identified as the world's oldest sanctuary and the first monumental structure built by human hands. We are talking massive, intricately carved, T-shaped pillars arranged in circles, predating known pottery, writing, or permanent housing by centuries.
It's unbelievable.
It forces us to rethink everything we assumed about the order of civilization.
The traditional narrative is always, people settle down, they invent agriculture, they create a food surplus, and then they have the time and the labor force to build temples.
Right.
Göbekli Tepe flips that timeline completely on its head.
It absolutely does. The sources state that Göbekli Tepe was a place where hunter-gatherers, who were still nomadic, celebrated large, regular cult festivals. It was a massive, fixed, sacred destination drawing people from hundreds of miles away.
Okay, so if you were drawing thousands of people, or even hundreds, regularly for a massive social gathering, a party, as the sources humorously suggest, that presents a colossal logistical challenge.
That is the critical insight. The necessity of providing regular and sufficient food and drink for these numerous party people, meaning meat, grains, eventually fermented beverages, it required a sustained, reliable, and predictable food source.
You can't rely on a lucky hunt.
You cannot rely on a successful migratory hunt or random foraging to feed the builders and participants of a massive cult festival that happens on a schedule. The risk is just too high.
So the demand for ceremony, for community, for shared religious experience created a pressure cooker that forced technological innovation. Culture drove technology, not the other way around.
Precisely. This necessity spurred the Stone Age inhabitants in the surrounding region to stop simply harvesting wild grains like emmer and einkorn and start actively manipulating them. They needed specific traits, grains that didn't shatter and disperse their seeds easily, which makes harvesting efficient, and grains that were high yield. They began to domesticate wild grains and develop new cereal varieties, fundamentally inventing agriculture.
Wow, that is a staggering realization. We invented farming so we could throw better parties and build bigger temples, and the result was this fundamental change in the human existence.
It was the ultimate systemic shift. After millions of years as nomadic foragers, constantly tracking resources and adapting to the land, humans placed their entire existence on a completely new engineered foundation. Instead of mobility, stability became the priority. The sources confirm this was the achievement that changed humanity like no other.
What were the immediate, visceral, sociological shifts that happened once agriculture was adopted widely?
Suddenly, people had different jobs and, crucially, different concepts of time and property. Hunter-gatherers became farmers who now required new technology. Pottery for storage, grinding stones for processing, fixed structures for sheltering harvests.
Nomads became settled.
Nomadic wanderers became settled house dwellers. They traded the freedom of mobility for the security and predictability of a reliable, although often very labor-intensive, food surplus.
And this stable surplus is the key. Once food is guaranteed and stored, you can free up people to specialize. You need administrators to manage the storehouses, laborers to build fortifications, ritual specialists to maintain the cultural order.
The complexity spirals rapidly. This stability led quickly to the rise of the first villages in the fertile regions surrounding Göbekli Tepe, what we now call the Fertile Crescent. These villages were stable, dense, and permanent.
And soon after, we see the jump from village to true urbanism.
Yes. From the small, dispersed agrarian settlements, we arrive at the first true proto-city, Çatalhöyük, established 9,500 years ago in Anatolia.
I've seen pictures. It's that massive community where all the houses are built right next to each other.
Right, accessible via the roofs. It was a fixed, organized community demonstrating the capacity for sustained, large-scale cooperation and management, all made possible by that agricultural surplus.
So Çatalhöyük provided the proof of concepts. The template was set. Stable food supply equals permanent, large-scale settlement. Once that cognitive and logistical hurdle was cleared, the speed of transition just accelerated dramatically.
From Çatalhöyük, it was only a small conceptual and logistical step to the world's first genuine metropolis. We are moving from the Neolithic Stone Age directly into the historical era. That city was Uruk, located in modern-day Iraq, dating to the 4th millennium BC.
And Uruk is legendary. It wasn't just a large town, it was a complex city-state with massive architecture, specialized labor, and isn't it often credited with the invention of writing?
Cuneiform writing, standardized bureaucracy, complex codified laws. It's the birth of high culture. The sources confirm the establishment of Uruk marked the definitive beginning of a new epoch in human history, the era of high cultures, or Hochkulturen. It is the grand culmination of the million-year journey we've traced.
Let's recap that. Fire gave us the brain power.
The hand axe gave us repeatable planning.
The spear provided strategic social structure.
Work provided shared culture.
Yeah.
The needle ensured physical survival.
And agriculture provided the massive, sustained stability needed to organize and build Uruk.
You see the thread.
You truly see the continuous thread. Every single one of those Stone Age inventions was a necessary precursor for the existence of Uruk. You couldn't skip a step. The kitchen had to come before the temple.
And the temple, or the communal need for ceremony, as we see at Göbekli Tepe, provided the ultimate incentive to make that final, permanent shift to farming, sealing the deal on fixed civilization.
What a dense, incredible journey. We started 1 million years ago with Homo erectus taming flame, and we ended in the 4th millennium BC with the rise of urbanism at Uruk. To bridge that gap, humanity invented specialized tools, calculated ballistic physics, developed, well, not metallurgy, but complex tech for sewing, and completely redesigned its diet and its social structure.
The enduring lesson from these 6 foundational facts is not just that Stone Age people were smart, it's that human creativity is relentless.
Yes.
Whether that ingenuity is manifested in a perfectly weighted spear that required applied physics or in the quiet essential necessity of a small needle, it is always driven by the desire to optimize existence and solve environmental or social challenges. These ancient blueprints demonstrate systematic, targeted innovation.
They weren't just stumbling into these inventions. They were actively designing solutions. They were asking, how can we throw this faster? How can we stay warmer? How can we feed everyone who wants to come to the party?
Right.
These are high-level problems, and the solutions they found are still with us.
And if we return to that key insight, that discovery at Göbekli Tepe, we are left with a really provocative thought. The source material suggests that the ultimate technological revolution, agriculture, was driven by the deep social and cultural necessity of gathering, feasting, and ceremony. The need for a shared, structured society demanded a food system that didn't exist yet.
This raises an important question for you, the listener, to explore. If ceremony, social structure, and shared mythology were the true catalysts for the ultimate technological revolution of agriculture, what deep societal needs today, what cultural, communal, or abstract desires, are secretly driving the next great human innovation? Are we inventing solutions today not for survival, but just to better feed the need for shared experience? Ponder that connection between the communal spirit and the necessity of technology as you go about your day.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the magnificent, complex ingenuity of the Stone Age.
We'll see you next time.